Hi, this is Marlene, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Stories of the Supernatural. Whether you're watching a video or listening to a podcast, please like and subscribe to us so that you can get notification of when a new show is released. Links to videos or MP3 files can be found on miamighostchronicles.com. Go to marlenepardo.com for information on new book releases. I narrate several podcast series that can be found on major podcast platforms and can also be listened to via Alexa, Sonos, and other home systems. Look for Supernatural Storytime for scary storytelling, Nightshade Diary for classic horror and adventure stories, Stories of the Supernatural for interviews with different guests on the show. If you want to get noteworthy news about the paranormal world, true crime, conspiracy stories, and anything that is just plain weird, you can visit Strange Than Fiction Stories tab at miamighostchronicles.com or find us on Blogspot. I want to thank you for being part of my audience, and I think you are all wonderful. Hi everybody, this is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, Stories of the Supernatural, and as promised, I am going to film my chickens, my chicks. As a matter of fact, here's a pull from today. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. It's about 15 eggs for the day. And that's, I've been holding back on my egg maker just to give them a break. I'll do that every once in a while so that just to slow it down a little bit. And as you can see, these are my chicks. Now, as you can tell, they're not newly hatched. And there's my naked neck girl. She's the mommy. And a lot of the red ones that you see there, those are very nice little Rhode Island Reds. Let me explain what I did. She had only hatched about 5, and I went to a local farm supply in my area, and they had 6 Rhode Island Red chicks that were only about a week old. And I bought them. One of them died, but that's expected. It happens with chicks. So she took them over. She had just hatched the other chicks, and at night I just snuck them in under her, and she's been mommy to them ever since. And by way of explanation for anybody thinking to do that, you can't do that when you can't wait too much difference in time or in an age of the chicks, because chicken world is savage. And if some of the chicks are much older than the other ones, they'll kind of push the younger ones aside and not let them eat. So about a week is the most I would say in the difference of age, where, let me open this again, and I don't know if you could tell, some of like the black ones, and there's one tan one. Yeah, him or her, I'm hoping it's a her. They're kind of a little bit even in size, but you can tell they're a little bit smaller. And then my one girl over here, she ended up hatching just 1 egg. Now my golden girl, she's a little girl. And that's her 1 chick. And usually what I'm doing is that you could tell this property is very big and very vast, and a lot of trees, and which is equivalent to a lot of birds of prey. So I usually let the chicks get a little bit larger. More, how can I say, not self-sufficient, but just faster on their feet, because like I said last time, I did lose a couple of chicks to what the heck is that hanging off that tree? What is that? I don't even know. I gotta go and check that out. It looks like a nest, or maybe it's just Spanish moss. I don't know. I'm discovering new stuff I've never seen before in my life. So anyway, guys, yeah. These are, and like I said, and for those of you who were asking me about, this is my chicken recovery unit. Okay, this one's blind and one eye. His eye's getting better. He's totally blind. He had one bad eye, and then he got into a fight with another rooster. That's my big boy. I call him Big Boy. One of these girls had a bad eye, and then she just doesn't want to leave. And that one over there, that one, if you could see how her head is kind of like pecked, and her back, she's getting too much attention from the boys. So I put her in here to catch a break. And yeah, that's what's happening. And over here is also my big boy Dusty.
he got sick and now he's in recovery, and I put him out there. All right, guys, I'll catch you later. Bye-bye.
Hi, everybody. This is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, Stories of the Supernatural. How's everybody doing? Good. For those of you who are looking at the video, you just saw my chicken video, my little mini chicken video that I had promised about my chicks for a while. And of course, I'm not going to include that in the podcast version because there's no point of reference for my podcast listeners. But those of you who saw, I had promised about my little chicks and my rehab for my chickens when they get sick, because that's what happens when you have a lot of animals. Yep. So there, I came through for you. And I know people are going to ask me, so are you going to go? No, I'm going to hold down the fort because I'm hoping to, out here in this area, they have a livestock chicken auction. And the last 15 months, they put it on hold because of COVID. Like, they called off all the auctions. And from what I understand, it's supposed to be coming back. I'm going to get into it because I need to get rid of some of my roosters. And that's one of the things also with when you have all these chicks that, uncontrolled chicken populations, all of a sudden, man, those boys are crazy. So yeah, for now, I'm going to try to maintain my population. But anyway, guys, let's get on to the good stuff. And the good stuff is that I'm very happy to welcome back a gentleman who's been with us before, and his name is Barry R. Strohm. He's a medium, an author, a lecturer, and also a radio show host. And for those of you who didn't catch the first podcast that we had, I want to say it was maybe 2 to 3 years ago. Let me tell you about what is Barry all about. First of all, he uses the gift of spirit communication to communicate with souls on the other side of the life veil. Now, this is a unique talent that, how can I say, that what he does is he has the ability to speak the words of the spirit and even archangels. His works include 7 books based on supernatural topics, from the spirits at the Battle of Gettysburg, the truth about the afterlife, aliens, conspiracies, interviews with historic figures, to archangels, and channeling the holiest of spirits. Barry and his wife Connie, they're currently the host of a radio show on the Para X network named Channeling History. And they interview the spirits of historic figures and allow listeners in the chat room to ask questions of the spirit guest. As a matter of fact, I even asked him that, they know ahead of time, 1 week, who is the historic person that they're going to go ahead and channel. And we'll talk to Barry about that. He's also posting a weekly podcast named A Weekly Message from Jesus, in which he brings listeners a spiritual message to bring comfort in troubled times. He also has a book titled Spirit Speak, Channeling Jesus and the Holy Spirit. And it's available in softback, on ebook, on Amazon. And you can also find his YouTube channel, which he has over 100 videos of the channeling the historic figures. He's also appeared on various different radio shows, including Coast to Coast, Darkness Radio, and Fade to Black with Jimmy Church. He has, as a matter of fact, he has several books, not only the latest, which is The Spirit Speak. He has ones, again, dealing with Gettysburg and the afterlife, aliens. So much. I was telling him, I don't know where to start with him, but let's start off with welcoming him back. How are you doing today, Barry?
Oh, could not be better.
I am so happy to be able to talk to you again. And we were talking briefly. We both moved since we both spoke the last time. We both went on to you moved to a different state, and I moved to the same state, but I moved up north. And now are you, this last book that you I mean, you've been busy. When we spoke the first time, you didn't have the YouTube show, you didn't have the radio show, but I'm so curious, that thing about the channeling the historic figures. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get that idea? What I know that you've been involved in this, but what made you think this would be? I think that's so fascinating, to be honest with you. How did you decide to do that?
Well, it goes back to when I wrote the conspiracy book.
Okay.
When we were just getting started channeling then, And I started asking questions of the guides, and they basically about these different characters. And they basically said, well, you can speak to them, channel them yourself. So we did 27 conspiracies in our conspiracy book. We channeled with Jack Kennedy, George Patton, Billy the Kid. We did a whole bunch of them.
Okay.
So I learned that we could do it. I mean, that's not something you really think you can do when you get started on something like that. So anyway, as we moved along, then I did the 2 alien books that we found that we could actually channel the spirits of aliens.
Okay.
And I wrote 2 books about that. And then we started having these very, very holy spirits starting to come in for us.
Okay.
We had Mother Mary come in. Jesus himself comes in, and we really had trouble believing that when it started.
Okay.
But he told us he had to convince me. My background is engineering and construction and statistics and things like that. So when he comes in, the first time we thought it was a spirit faking it, but as it turns out, it really wasn't. So he says, I'm going to give you the ability to heal as proof that you really are speaking to me. And he gives me 2 names. And I was getting ready to speak at a convention in Salt Lake.
Okay.
And it turns out that the names he gives me, the one of them was the woman that was in charge of the convention. So, I go in and she was there, and I said, this is going to seem really weird, but you have a heart problem?
Are you serious?
Yeah. And she says, yeah, as a matter of fact, I do. And I said, well, Jesus wants me to pray, gave me this prayer he wants me to say so I could fix your heart for you. So, yeah, and I know she was about ready to kick my butt out of the place. But I said the prayer, and she's still kicking around. and then there was another woman there, and I heard her saying that she had these terrible migraines that and she was having one during the convention. And in my head, I hear, "Go heal her." I'm going, uh-oh. So I go over to her and I say, "No, look, this is going to be really weird, but you can heal your migraine for you." And she said, "No, I'll do anything to get rid of them." And then I said the healing prayer for her. Within an hour, her migraine was gone, and she hasn't had one for 4 years now.
What?
So, yeah, then I probably healed about 30 people, and I had a couple with stage 4 cancers that are still around and in regression. And
that is.
So that's how he convinced me.
Okay, right. I was gonna say that was like the how the result was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, once I went through all that, I mean, I'm okay. It's the man.
Bet.
No, that's who it is.
I bet.
And then he pulled something else off.
Okay.
4 years ago, well, I had a quad bypass 5-6 years.
Okay.
So 3 years ago, I had a heart attack, and I go into the hospital, and they're getting the surgeon shows me the heart damage, everything. Weakness. So when I'm waiting there going into surgery, I had my eyes closed, and in my mind's eye, I see this angel flying up to me.
Okay.
The angel comes up, stops right in front of me, and flies away. I said, "Well, Connie, I guess we don't have anything to worry about. And I just got a message." So we go into the catheterization where they want to, do the stents and stuff. And the surgery's over, and I wake up. I said, "Okay, guys, how many stents did we have?" And he said, "None. You don't have any heart damage."
What?
He said, we went through all the lines, everything with the quad is in great shape, and we couldn't find any heart damage, and we can't explain it. We have no idea. So I'm thinking, well, that's pretty cool, I guess. So they wheel me out, and I'm laying in recovery, And in my head, just as clear as can be, I hear this voice. And it says, if I can have you heal others, I can heal you as well.
Okay.
And he had sent Raphael. That was the angel that I saw.
Okay.
And right before I went in, Raphael cured my heart.
Because they were prepared to do a surgery on what they thought was a badly damaged heart.
Correct. Yeah. Oh, they were all set. I mean, we talked about what type of blood thinners I wanted and what type of stent and, the whole thing.
Yeah, right. It was even the post-operation, everything. That is, what an incredible story, Barry.
Yeah, no, that's so, yeah, I'm convinced. Yeah. And I
That
mean,
is like, wow. Yeah, how can you not?
yeah.
So, God, I was thinking, when you, I'm going to go back to, let's say now you're going to do your next show, for example, and you're going to plan and how do you get a message that says interview this person, or how is it that you decide who you're going to channel?
I'll generally get a message.
Okay.
I'm talking to the guides all the time, and they'll, I'll say, are we good for this person next week? Now, this coming on Sunday, we're going to do Julius Caesar.
Oh, what? Okay.
So, I mean, we get around.
Yeah, but you know what? It's really funny because when you look at Hollywood so much has made up about historical figures that are not accurate.
Oh my God.
Sometimes people are surprised when they find out what the real story is about certain people in history.
I mean, we did the John Wilkes Booth conspiracy. And
do you believe that thing that he was that he didn't die?
Absolutely.
And he lived later on.
Oh, he dies in 1903 in Enid, Oklahoma.
Right. That he that they just staged the body over in that barn supposedly.
Yeah, they had a Confederate captain that looked a lot like Booth, and they brought him down, put him in, killed him, and there were no autopsy pictures taken.
Oh, weird. You would think that.
In those days, they really took a lot of pictures of dead bodies because photography was new then.
Right, especially somebody that had assassinated the president of the United States. Come on.
Yeah, but they took absolutely no pictures of the dead body to confirm it. And now the guy takes off. And I mean, he actually winds up committing suicide in 1903. Right.
I read something about that. And I was reading that and I was like, man, this is pretty convincing about that in actuality, and sometimes I think we find it hard to believe, but a lot of the things that we use now to confirm identity didn't exist back then. DNA and blood, things like that.
No,
and
I'll tell you another really interesting one is Billy the Kid.
That's another one. What happened? Well,
Pat Garrett kills the kid's friend, shoots him in the back, and the kid takes off and heads for Mexico, and basically decides that he's not going to be on the wrong side of the law anymore. Comes back. He actually is with the Wild West show.
Okay.
For a while, and dies in 1951.
I had not heard that. What?
Yep. No, I've channeled Billy the Kid several times. We did the Kid live on the radio show.
What did he do? Did he just assume a different identity and that was it, and just became like in other words, stayed out of trouble?
Yeah, just stayed out of trouble. Went to Texas. Nobody knew him there in Texas. No one no one knew what he looked like.
Exactly.
So the guy just decides I'm not going to do this anymore and lives a normal life. And I think he was like 81 or something when he dies.
Right. And because if you think about it.
Yeah, he was really interesting because what I do now is I speak their words.
Okay.
And with Billy the Kid, I was using all of his Old West vernacular. I was speaking like he would be would have spoken in the Old West.
Okay.
And I'd be doing this, and I could see him leading up where he was going to swear, And all that, but he always caught himself. But
Okay.
I knew what was coming.
Okay.
But I actually spoke with the accent he would have had in the Old West when we did that show.
Right. And you know what? Because what was it? I saw the show back a few years ago, which was the Deadwood series that they had on HBO. And one of the things I liked about it is that they had the characters talk the way people actually did talk
Mm-hmm.
in the Old West, during those time period, not the West per se, but that time period, people didn't talk like they do now. They use different types of expression, different slang.
Oh, yeah.
And that's one of the things I liked about that series of Deadwood, because the characters were made to speak
That was a
the
great
way
series.
people did.
Yeah.
Not, now you see a lot of stuff and it's like, yeah, you're speaking like 21st or 20th century. And that's not the way people express themselves.
No. We did King Richard III.
Yes, and that must have been.
He spoke in Old English to us with the
What?
I's and the yays and the nays, all that.
Well,
we've done some really interesting channelings. It's
that is incredible. And again, what's that thing about to the victor go the spoils? I think to the victor goes the ability to write history the way they want it to go. The reason I say that is that after a while, whoever wants to have the history portrayed this way, and the real characters, that's it. Once they're dead and the people that were witnesses for that time period have died, who's to say that's not the way it happened?
Well, the greatest example of that is the Bible.
Well, I know that the Bible has always been changed, and whether it was through interpretation or on purpose.
Most of it. The monks of the church rewrote the Bible. They thought that they had to exaggerate everything
because,
so people would remember. I mean, that was the way their minds worked. If you didn't do 37 miracles and bring people out of the grave and all that stuff, it wouldn't remember you.
Right, because we were supposedly talking the glory of God, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. So it had to be over the top.
Yeah, that's why he wanted me to write the Channeling the Life of Jesus book.
Okay.
Because he wanted to tell the true story of his life.
And
he was married and had 5 children.
Well, you answered my question for me, which is
I'm psychic, remember?
No, there you go. Well, no, you know what? I'm the kind of person that I know people get offended, or they don't like to feel like either whether it was Jesus or if they, if they're the religion like Catholic had the Virgin Mary, they don't want them to be more human, because they kind of think that makes them less dignified, more like less a deity. And I'm like, why?
No, his ministry lasted 3 years.
Okay.
And that was when he did all the miracles and did all the stuff, the people remember him for.
Right.
But it's until that, the guy lives a normal life.
Right.
Yeah. And they told us this, we write at length a whole chapter about his birth.
Okay.
And his birth, see, you have to understand, God has a soul family of souls that he sends back to do things.
Okay.
And he sends, but everything, Jesus had this intricate life plan laid out.
Mm-hmm.
Like when he's born, Herod gets the word that the king of the Jews has been born. So he wants to obviously kill that because he wants that title for his sons.
Right.
So Jesus sends the wise men.
Mm-hmm.
This is part of the life plan. But it's not just 3. There's over 50 in the group.
Really? Because
they travel with security. They had to check in. It's very dangerous times.
Mm-hmm. You're right. Absolutely right.
People. So the wise men don't get there until Jesus is like 3 months old.
Okay.
Because they get the message.
Yeah, it's like a caravan kind of thing,
Yeah, they got to come in. They got to go through the whole trip. They got to go see Herod to check in, because you couldn't just come into another king's area.
Okay.
So they go through this whole process. But they actually do bring in the gold, the frankincense, and the myrrh.
Okay.
And they give them. Now, Mary and Joseph, are just very, very simple people. They're uneducated. He's a carpenter.
Right.
And when we talked to Mary, she says, we were blown away with these people, these wonderful royalties show up. We'd never seen anything like it before.
Mm-hmm.
But the wise men tell Mary and Joseph that Herod is going to kill the baby.
Right.
And then they give them all these gifts. And those gifts are what finances Mary and Joseph to be able to go to Egypt and save the life of Jesus.
Right, and escape the slaughter of the innocents.
Slaughter of the innocents. But those gifts are what finances and allows them to go. So I mean, it's a wonderful, believable story. Let me tell you
something. People sometimes, when they hear that story about Herod, and they don't realize back in those times, it was very normal for these kings to be that bloodthirsty.
Oh,
if they believed in if they had some type of seer come and tell them that there was going to be some type of threat to their lineage or their throne, they didn't think twice about doing stuff like that.
Oh, no. That was that's the way they did things.
Yeah.
It was incredibly brutal times.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it was. It was. And you kept your crown any way you could.
Mm-hmm. Well, Herod was especially interested in keeping it for his sons, because he had, the son Antipas, he had like 3 or 4 sons that he wanted to take over. So there was no way he was going to allow a baby to be called the king of the Jews, because Herod was actually of Jewish lineage. Right.
But of course, to him, he didn't think of it so much as in the spiritual sense. He was thinking of it as an actual king that's going to come and take over my throne.
Yes.
Because that's the only way he could conceive of it.
Oh, yeah.
In other words.
Oh, yeah. No, the ancients could only conceive of things in certain ways.
Mm-hmm.
Like they could only conceive of creation with a man and a woman.
Right.
So they come up with Adam and Eve.
Yes.
So, I mean, a lot of the allegories are really the only way the ancients could think of things.
Well, and I agree, like, that it makes it. What was the first? And I'm not sure if what was it, Aramaic, or what was the original text of the Bible written as?
Well, is that you probably Aramaic, but keep in mind, the earliest writings are like 70 A.D.
Right, which is
7. That's 40 years, 2 generations after Christ is crucified.
And that's what I'm saying. And the author, everybody doesn't realize that whoever pens something, it's screened through the interpretation of who's writing it.
Oh, yeah.
Or their memories, or their, how, and like you said, if I think that this would sound better if I embellish it a little bit here and there, why not?
Well, just let people pass on stories and see how they change.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Constantine doesn't really get going with the selection of the Gospels until 325 A.D.,
which is quite
300 years after Christ dies. That is a longer time than the United States has been in existence.
Yes.
And nobody wrote down the teachings of Jesus
as they were happening. Like, nobody was following him around,
No, there was no contemporary writings. It all comes from memory.
Exactly. And that's, people don't, because I think a lot of people tend to lump that time period. And like you said, Constantine, that was over 300 years after Christ.
Yeah,
that's a long time.
Yeah, we interviewed Constantine.
And he did.
Oh, yeah. And he told us what he was thinking about. We said, why did you choose like Matthew, Mark, and Luke? He said, because they were complete gospels and the information in all 3 of those agreed.
Was he an opportunist when he decided to become Christian?
Not really. He actually was he became a true Christian.
Okay.
I mean, he firmly believed. Now, he felt that baptism cleansed your soul of all sins.
Okay.
So he waits until he's on his deathbed to be baptized, so that he can.
It's like, yeah, I know I can't get in trouble in the next couple of hours, so.
Yeah, but no, it's but he gave us the true story on it.
Okay.
Revelations. Constantine didn't believe Revelations. And that doesn't come into like another 100 years.
Okay.
It's almost 5th century till they incorporate Revelation. But that's what really incorporates fear into the Gospels.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Retribution.
End of days.
End of days. Yeah. You know, everybody's
and
in big trouble. Like, in other words, yeah. And there's no escape. Right.
Yeah. But the church wanted to introduce that
Mm-hmm.
because it gives fear to their parishioners.
Yes.
And they believe that the only way that they're ever going to get to heaven is through the church.
Yes.
And it's the fear. So
right, which is the which, you know, of course, for anybody, that's what later on doing the mass only in Latin, you know, only
the whole thing.
priests, and then that drove the schism for the, you know, Protestant movement, and which went all in the opposite direction. And it's, I want to make a comment. Now, you know, there's certain churches, Catholic churches, that still hold the Latin mass, which is fine if you want to attend. And I heard that the Vatican wanted to prohibit them from doing that. I'm like, why would you? I mean, why if a church wants to have a mass once a week or whatever in Latin, and there's people attending it, why would you prohibit that? I couldn't understand. And I was thinking, I think it's the reverse of what happened back then, you know, where because it was in Latin, because it was only certain priests, you know, that could read, you know, literacy rate was not what it was. People felt excluded, like exactly like what you said. You needed to go through the church to get to God. In other words, that was that was the only path. The only path of salvation lay through the church. Right. Which is, but then, and you know, you hear about how they would self-favor, you know, basically like almost like when you were talking about Constantine, when you were getting older and death was near, you could like purchase your way out of all your bad deeds. Or have somebody pray for your soul.
Oh, the church came up with all that.
Yeah, of course.
To raise funds, sure.
Yeah.
His teachings were just incredibly simple.
Yeah, well, that's, I guess that's the point I'm trying to make, that you see where probably something that started as very simple, and I'm going to use the word most people don't like to be, ordinary, and then it was hijacked into something else.
Yeah, when everything gets exaggerated.
Exactly.
I mean, we've the last book, we have a chapter with St. Paul. He tells us what it was like to see him after the resurrection. Okay. I mean, the resurrection, a lot of that is fairly accurate for the way that things came down. Okay. But we have chapters, in the last book, we have chapters, Mary Magdalene, Mother Mary, St. Paul. Okay. And it's really interesting because you see these souls keep repeating and coming back through history. Okay. Now, Jesus has 5 children, had 1 daughter and 4 sons. Okay. And one of those sons happened to reincarnate as Billy Graham. What? Yeah. Billy Graham was a reincarnated son of Jesus.
I'm speechless.
Well, I was too when I found out the way we found out about it. We were doing a call-in show. Okay. And we were using the channeling board. And it was like 3 months after Billy Graham passes. Okay. And a caller comes in and he says, "Do you think we could channel Billy Graham?" I have nothing to do with this. This is all coming through. Right. So I said, "Well, I don't know. He's recently passed, so we'll give it a try." So I asked Laura, my guide, I said, "Would it be possible to have the spirit of Reverend Graham?" All of a sudden I hear, "Hello, can I help you?" Okay. And I said, "Are we speaking with Reverend Graham?" "Yes, absolutely." And I said, "You have to prove to me that we really have the right spirit." Now we're live on the air with this thing going on. So on the channeling board, it spells out the word Ezekiel on the channeling board. And Ezekiel was the oldest son of Jesus.
Okay.
And all of a sudden, everything just clicks. And I go, and I'm actually stuttering. Now I don't know what to say because nobody, I'm the only person in the world that knows this.
Uh-huh.
And
Right, because of course, because you've channeled Jesus, yes.
Yeah. I said, okay, yeah, I'm convinced. And then we had a really nice conversation with Reverend Graham.
I'm going to ask you, when Jesus, he flees, Jerusalem, that whole area, where does he go to?
When? During what part?
After his crucifixion, after his resurrection,
Oh.
so that he could he's supposed to not exist anymore, in other words. Where does he go to?
Well, he stays in the area.
He does? Okay.
Yeah. Mary Magdalene is still there. He told all of the disciples.
Right.
And there were about 50 disciples and followers.
Okay.
And he tells them, he says, I will return to you. Well, they can't understand what this is going to be about, obviously, because no one's ever resurrected before.
Mm-hmm.
So they think that they have seen the miracle where Lazarus comes from the grave.
Okay.
So they're thinking in terms that he is going to physically return to them. But he returns in spirit and form.
Okay.
And Mary Magdalene's the first to see him.
Okay.
And then she goes back and tells the other disciples, and they don't believe her. They think that the grief has gotten to her.
Okay.
And then he starts appearing to the different disciples, and then the picture comes together. But they never really understood that he was going to return.
You know what? Maybe this is where I misunderstood. So in other words, you're saying that he had his family with Mary Magdalene prior to the crucifixion?
His wife's name was Toba. We actually have a chapter in the book of her too. But
so in other words,
Mary Magdalene was one of his most trusted disciples.
Disciples. That's what I was going to say. So that's what all she was. She was just a disciple.
She was just a disciple, yeah.
Okay. All right. I guess everybody's, always thinking, well, something's got to be going on. Okay.
Yeah, but no. We've done probably 3 or 4 shows in different segments with her.
Okay, so in other words, she's just a disciple that happens to be a woman.
Yeah.
And he's married to Toba. Mm-hmm. And basically what you're saying is he had a family prior to the crucifixion.
Absolutely. He was married for 8 years.
Okay.
And they feared. Jesus knew what was happening. He knew what his future was. And they feared that the Romans would kill his family.
All right.
So the fact that he's married is a well-kept secret.
I understand.
The only disciple that he ever told he was married was Peter. Peter was the only one that ever knew Jesus had been married, because they kept the family aside, and he was very worried that the Romans would find out and kill them as well.
Right, because from what I understand, it was very normal. A 33-year-old man without a family was unheard of.
Correct.
Yeah, you married and had children much, much younger.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That was like the custom.
Toba was 14 when she married him.
Okay. All right. So so this is why basically you're saying history and everybody else doesn't mention her, because she is...
It was a well-kept secret because they feared that the Romans would take it out on his family.
Which probably would have.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and all of his children just grow up and have normal jobs.
Okay.
They don't follow as disciples for the same reason.
In other words, right. And that makes sense. Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
His whole life makes incredible sense when you know the truth. When you get through all the exaggerations and all the stuff. It's a wonderful, believable story.
Right. And again, we come back to being an ordinary human. You cannot be holy or special. I don't know what to call it. If you can't be one or the other. You can't be that human, because then of course, it just doesn't. Like you said, you have to be above all of that stuff. But in reality,
No,
there's nothing wrong with being totally human, as in having a family.
he
And
wanted to experience a human lifetime.
yes,
He travels. He just travels the Mediterranean area, but he wanted to see the suffering of the people to understand it. He wanted to be near it.
mm-hmm.
So he travels from the time he's 15 to, I think, 19. For like 4 years, he travels the area. Then he comes back and he marries Toba. And they have for 8 years, they live a normal life. They have children.
Okay.
Mary and Joseph are wonderful grandparents for them.
Okay.
And Mary lives an absolute normal life. I mean,
Right. And does she have other children?
yes. Yes.
Which is the norm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, that's another one that people can't get their head wrapped around, that, that one moment in her life would bring everything else to a complete halt.
Yeah. No.
You know,
I mean, the whole concept of Immaculate Conception is she lived
exactly.
a life without sin.
Exactly.
No,
That whole
I
thing
mean,
is,
Jesus, in his normal life, he loses his temper. He gets mad. He does things that
Mhm.
ordinarily be considered as a sin.
Yes, you're right.
He lives a normal life for 28 years.
Okay.
And that's also why nothing in the Gospels, you have his birth, you have a thing made up in the temple at 10, when he's like 10, 11 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And the next thing you hear about is the crucifixion, is his ministry. Is it 20
Right, the 3 years that supposedly he's, before that, basically when he, I guess, is more that he's seen, that he's preaching, in other words, that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 3 years. His ministry lasts 3 years and changes the world.
That is, what do you think about all these, the Gnostic Gospels and all of these, and do you think that they're legitimate, that they were truly written by holy inspiration, or what?
Well, some of them are. I mean, there's a lot of truth in the Lost Gospels. I read a lot of them in preparation for writing that Life of Jesus book.
Mm-hmm.
So there's stuff in it that's very accurate, and there's stuff that's made up.
Okay.
Because most of those Lost Gospels come after. They're all coming after.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, there's no contemporary work for his life.
No, there isn't. You're absolutely right. There
Mm-hmm.
not It was just, and even then, people don't realize that even word of mouth, things get, for lack of a better word, they lost in translation.
Mm-hmm. Oh, hey, when Constantine calls the Conference of Nicaea,
Mm-hmm.
the big thing that they wanted to settle was the date to celebrate Easter, because they did not know the date that Christ was killed.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's the main reason he calls the conference, because there's two factions of Christianity and they're fighting about who is correct. And they were celebrating Easter in conflict with Passover.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And they wanted to cure that. And that was to settle that date when they would celebrate Easter was the main reason why he calls the Conference of Nicaea.
Isn't that interesting? I mean, I know, and I'm not that familiar really with the Conference of Nicaea, but also I believe that I've heard that at that time they wanted to remove any reference to reincarnation.
Yeah, they feared, the church hated the concept of reincarnation.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Just as this church hates the concept of psychics. Because all through time, the great prophets were psychics.
Mm-hmm.
Because they got their messages with their psychic abilities.
Right.
And as time progressed, the psychics would get messages that were in contrast to the teachings of the church. So that was why they added the stuff in about soothsayers, and you should never change a word of the gospel and all this stuff.
Right. Yeah, and usually, yeah, it boiled. That's the pretext, but usually it boils down to power and money.
Correct.
That's the
It
real motivators.
always does.
Always, always.
Mhm.
Yes, it does. I hate to say it,
Uh-huh.
but yeah, it does. Um, now, when and I know you mentioned I want to this thing with the aliens.
Yes.
Okay. And I mean, as a hypnotherapist, I had studied where, there is attachments also of alien entities or, non-physical form. How's that?
Yeah, that's fine. I go.
And what do you get as far as, are they, I mean, what is it? They're souls just like ours that have decided to, or are we basically sprung from the same genetic line, or what is it that they have going on that they're so attracted by humans?
Their soul energy is exactly the same as our soul energy.
Okay.
Now, soul energies were created at creation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is billions of years ago. Humans walked the earth for about 250,000 years.
Okay.
So where do you think soul energies were before humans walked the earth?
You would think the source of whatever the source is.
They are on other planets and other civilizations that take place long before humans are created.
So in other words, these
You and I have been aliens many, many
and
more times than we
prior
have
to
been here.
that, the human, as we know, here as far as on the
Yeah,
earth, and I
yeah,
understand what you're saying.
yeah. I mean, it's just tell me where that soul energy had to be for
Of
those
course.
billions of years before humans are here. And
Exactly.
there's civilizations out there that have been around for millions of years that are highly developed, but they have the same soul energies that we have, and that's why I can channel aliens. We channeled an alien live on the radio show and let people ask them questions
Really.
through the chat room.
And what do you oh. And then sometimes I say this, sometimes we put on, whether it's, let's say we'll go with the aliens, like the same moral compass as humans, and then we want to make them either good or evil. You understand what I'm saying?
Well,
And sometimes it's not that they're bad, it's just that they're different, or maybe they see things differently from us.
much different. We have no way to understand aliens
Mm-hmm.
because they feel emotions we don't feel.
Right,
They
exactly.
speak languages we don't speak. They think in manners that we don't have any concept of. They can, I mean, they're telepathic. They can, it's like the beam me up Scotty stuff. They can,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's the whole thing is just, we are such a young culture. We are so far behind these aliens.
Okay.
Now, when we were working on the alien books,
Okay.
they told me that disclosure would start in 2020, and
Okay.
it has.
Well, yeah, let's
Right
see how
now,
much
there's
they
like
actually disclose, because I'm not too, I
we're
guess
working up to it.
I
Now,
know they're taking the scenic route.
oh yeah, no government is scared to death to let the people know this.
Yes, they are. They are
Mhm.
very much so. They're very much so, because, and I'm going to ask you, because do you think, because, some people believe that the government and ETs have been in collusion, and we've back engineered a bunch of technology, and that, we've got a secret hybrid plan with them. Do you think we know as much as that, or is there more that we really don't know than what we actually do know? In other words, people are going by the X-Files show
There's
versus.
a lot going on we don't know. We've had an agreement with the aliens since our 10th president.
Okay.
So there's a
That's
galactic.
I was gonna say that's the 19th century there.
Uh-huh. This goes way back. I mean, when I wrote the alien book, I included a woodcut from 1600s
Okay.
of a crop circle.
Okay.
They referred to them as mowing devils in those days, in the 17th century.
Okay.
So, I mean, they've been visiting Earth since the time of the dinosaurs. That's what they tell us.
Right. Right. And
And there's many, many more types than we ever conceive of.
I was going to say there's more than one type, right? And some I think, I guess, are nicer than others.
Yeah, yeah. Some of them, they have to conform to the rules of the Galactic Committee.
So there is a set of rules that they have to. They can't just like
Yes.
in other words, there are consequences if they do certain things versus others.
Absolutely. And the main thing that all the great advanced cultures have learned is they need to get along. That's
okay.
They have to get along. Otherwise, they ain't going to be here. The same as humans got to learn to get along, or we aren't going to be here either.
Are they the ones that, and I guess the question why I asked us, are some better than others is because, for example, you see all these cattle mutilations and all these things going on that are being laid at the doorstep of extraterrestrials. And it's like, God, why would they do that?
Research.
Really?
Yeah. Just the same as abductions.
Exactly.
My wife, Connie's been abducted.
She has.
Oh, yeah. She's an abductee.
Did that start when she was young, or what happened with
No,
that?
just one time. It happened about 20 years ago.
Yeah, because I've heard some people, it's a lifelong
Yeah,
thing.
She dropped me, and we were living in Florida then. She dropped me off at Lauderdale at the airport, coming back up 95, and all of a sudden she realizes that she's 4 exits north of what last thing she remembers. They put a shapeshifter in the car for her and took her up.
And does she remember anything of what happened?
No. She knew, she thought she had blacked out, or she saw her cardiologist. He said, "Oh, you must have fallen asleep." Well, you don't drive 10, 15 miles on 95 asleep.
No. That'd be a short trip.
Mm-hmm.
No. And so that was the one time.
Yeah.
Did she notice anything different about herself, dreams, anything after that episode?
They were getting her ready for what we're doing now.
Okay.
For the channeling and everything.
Okay. Yeah, that's where I was going with that. I was thinking, I wonder how far in advance this was.
Oh, this is our life plan. Now this was all laid out in advance.
Okay. All right. So, in other words, they're aware of the ability. Well, I guess, is it something that all people have, or certain people have, or how does that work?
No, I didn't have any clue where I was headed with this thing, believe me. But there are certain people that are sent back to carry the words of God.
Okay.
And Jesus was God incarnate.
Okay.
So when we channel him every week, we are bringing messages that are supposed to be delivered. And the books that I've written are the books that I was supposed to write. They say I'm supposed to write 11 books. I'm in 7 right now.
Okay, so you got a little bit more to go.
Well, I'm going to write a book on the channelings of the Archangels.
Okay.
Conversation with Angels. And we're going to do this weekly message from Jesus. We're going to do a weekly devotional with these messages. Okay. We'll publish 52 of the messages.
All right. That's going to be so interesting. Barry, do you think that, because I also hear, there's people that are saying, well, these extraterrestrials, they won't ever let us basically annihilate ourselves or, our others or the planet. Do you think they would, or are they going to let us, make the right decision and cross their fingers? In other words, stand back and either we do the right thing or we don't. Keep
in mind that God gave us free will and egos.
Exactly.
And he will not interfere with free will.
That's what I'm getting to. I know that a lot of people think, no, if somebody crazy or something, things escalate, and they're going to step in and the ETs are going to stop it. And I'm like, well,
no, they aren't.
I go, what happened to the free will thing there?
No, I see it all the time. I mean, and he is very he is very explicit in his messages about free will. He explained, he has explained why some prayers are answered, some prayers are not.
And why is that?
Because it interferes with people's life plan.
Okay.
For instance, it might be in your life plan that you have to have Parkinson's to finish.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if he was to change that, then that's still a lesson that soul has to live in a future lifetime.
Right. So it's either now or later.
Mm-hmm. So he's going to, that's a prayer that will not be answered.
Exactly. Because there's always people that are going to ask that it's very like, the age-old question, why do bad things happen, even to good people, or just bad things happen and horrific things happen?
They're learning experiences. The whole human lifetime is a learning experience.
Yeah. Yes. Most definitely.
The human lifetime is a blink in the eye of your soul life.
Mm-hmm.
So you have lived thousands of lifetimes in the past. So while the human lifetime seems like it's a long time, it's nothing compared to your soul lifetime.
Is there, from what you've found out, is there a point where, I don't know if you want to call it perfection, or where you've basically learned everything you're going to learn?
Your learning experiences are what help you advance in the 7 realms of heaven.
Okay.
Each time you come back, your guides look at your life, that you may stay where you are, you may advance, or you may be demoted.
Oh, you get demoted.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can really get demoted.
Right.
I mean, like a soul like Hitler.
Mm-hmm.
He was a very advanced soul. They actually sent him back as a master guide to save Germany. And then his free will and ego takes over.
And ruined everything.
And he went from 7th level to the lowest level.
And the reason why I asked this, and you're going to see, because there's people that are what they call psychopaths,
Mm-hmm.
that are born this way. They really don't have a conscience, in the sense of they have no empathy. They're not made. Because everybody thinks that or that you could be a psychopath, and unless you were brought up in a violent lifestyle, you're not killing people. You're not running around killing people, but you're into control, and you do mean things, and you do things. In other words, you're not motivated by love. You're motivated by control. All right.
Yeah, your free will is taken over.
Right. You're in other words, the normal things that a person will say, man, that's not right. I shouldn't do that. They don't, it's missing. That part it makes me wonder, okay, if you were born this way as a psychopath, you're not running around killing people, but you're not really the best person, as a matter of fact. And you pretend to be emotional. In other words, some of them pretend at a very early age to express emotion, because otherwise they kind of stand out.
Mm-hmm.
What happens with people like that? Is it something that they're, how would I say, that they're living a life plan to learn what?
They tell us that evil is never part of a life plan.
Right.
So something happens to a psychopath.
Mm-hmm.
And I really can't answer what really takes place, but they're very emphatic about that evil is never part of a life plan.
Okay.
That all comes through your free will.
Okay.
And there are evil energies. So I would assume that an evil energy just takes over a psychopath.
Takes over and and directs, and upends that life.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes with horrific results, because I tell everybody, for all the criminals and people that are caught and jailed, and there's a bunch that never do, and I'm talking here about murder and really bad things, that they never get arrested. They die of old age, and they just learn to keep their mouth shut.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And
however, when they get over,
then
that's when the conversation starts.
Dun, 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 dun. And what happens? Do they come back? Are they victimized? I'm thinking to myself, how do you undo that kind of baggage, I guess is the best way to do it.
Well,
if you were like a wrecking ball with people when you were alive.
Well, you'll come down
Mm-hmm.
in your level in the realms,
Right.
and your guides will establish the karma that you have to pay for what you did.
Okay.
So it's possible that a single lifetime, you can screw up enough that it is going to affect the next 10 lifetimes.
Okay.
And
So in other words, it might take you several tries to like
oh yeah,
get back
the
to
karma is incredibly real.
right. Yeah. Yes. And you know, and I think a lot of people sometimes don't believe that. They don't believe that karma exists per se, because I think they see a lot of people they think get away with stuff.
They might, but they're what they're overlooking is the insignificance of that human lifetime.
Right. Yeah. Well, of
Keep
course.
in mind, the spirits always say that death is the beginning of a new cycle. To humans, death is the end of a cycle.
Right.
But to the spirits, it's the beginning.
Right. As far as, like you said, it's just a moment. Like one human life, an average human life is just the blink of an eye.
That's right.
Yeah, but then, and I understand why we're tethered to this life very strongly, that it matters to us, because that's why we put up with all the things we do, the good and the bad.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when we're incarnated in a flesh.
Oh,
That
yeah.
is. Let me ask you: have you and you mentioned something to me earlier that you learned the hard way? That when you were going to pick somebody to channel, you want to make sure that that person's available. What happened that you tried to communicate or channel someone that didn't want to, or what happened?
Well, I started to write a book about unsolved crimes.
Okay.
And I got I got about 3 chapters into the book with the channeling information.
Mm-hmm.
And the guide said, finally, our master comes in and she says, this is not what you're supposed to be doing. You're asking for evil, and we've told you never to ask for evil, because people that perpetrate these crimes are evil.
Okay.
So you can't channel with a person that perpetrated these crimes.
Right. In other words, right. Yeah. You can't bring in the.
Yeah. The first thing they ever told us when we started to channel was never invite evil.
Okay.
And then they said that you're going against what we told you, so stop. And that was the last we ever did a crime.
Okay. In other words, if you want to write the crime book, you can't channel. Those two don't.
That's right.
Yeah,
You write the crime book. It's just not you're not going to be speaking to the spirits that lived it.
Yeah, like the like in Ghostbusters, those don't cross the streams. Two different things.
Yep, that's how it works.
So basically, you're saying that you can, and I should know this. You know, channeling. Yeah, sometimes what you do channel, if you're into that, is very negative stuff, which is why people have to be careful when they channel. I take it.
Oh yeah, yeah. And we always say a prayer of protection before we start.
Okay.
But we're very well protected because we're dealing with these real high Holy Spirits. So
right. And how about the Archangels? Are they as busy as ever?
Oh yeah, they're incredible. That the energies of these Archangels are wonderful.
Okay. I imagine that but again, and let me ask you, because I know a lot of people, the thing about the angels, they ask the same things. Well, I ask for angelic help or angelic protection. And imagine a lot of it has to do also with, how can I say that if you ask an angel to basically interfere in another person's decision, they can't do that, right?
No, they won't do that. They're very aware of life plans.
Okay.
And they're very aware of free will.
Okay. Right. And that's, I think, that why some people sometimes get disappointed, because they think that their prayers or things are not answered, but there's a reason why.
Oh, there's always a reason why. Every prayer is heard.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when we started this and I was writing these different books, I'd pray for a couple different subjects to come in, or individuals, for the next day when we were going to be channeling information.
Mm-hmm.
And one day we opened up the channel, and the guide says, which one of the things do you want to talk about? And she tells me exactly what I had prayed for in all those different categories.
Wow.
So believe me, prayer is incredibly real.
Have you ever had a stop the press moment where you've had one of your guides come in and say, wait, we need to channel it, or we need to get this message we're going to use you to channel this message out?
Well, that's what happened when we started the weekly Message from Jesus podcast.
Really?
Yeah. He said, I want to deliver a message every week. It's okay. So we started the podcast so we could do it.
That's excellent. That is such a great story as far as, following through.
Oh,
no,
yeah.
You see what I'm saying? It's like, a lot of people are like, well, let's think about that. That sounds good. But you went ahead and was like, okay, let's do it.
Yeah. It's, let's just say you don't turn him down. When he
Right. It's like, absolutely not.
He's incredible energy when he comes in. It's just a wonderful energy to be able to talk to him.
And let me ask you, does your wife channel, or is it just you, Barry?
It's she supports it. She can get some messages, but she can't do it.
Okay.
No, I can do it basically the same rate as if we're talking, like we're doing now.
Right. And I remember from our first interview that at the beginning you had a hard time coming to terms with this, because like you said, you were a science-based engineer, that this didn't figure into, measurements kind of thing, huh?
No, I didn't believe in ghosts.
Yeah, that's right. I remember
15 years ago.
Yes, and then they convinced you.
They're good at it.
Barry, I want to thank you so much for being coming back again and talking about so many interesting things that it's like, wow. I'm going to put a link to your websites and the YouTube show, but for the podcast listeners, okay, if you could give out your website address as well as the radio show, what network they can find you on.
Okay. We do our weekly radio shows called Channeling History, and it's on the Parax Network.
Okay.
But I also put it up on my YouTube channel.
Okay.
So I've got over 150 videos on YouTube now.
Is on YouTube? Is it your personal name that if they wanted to look for it?
It's in my name, Barry Strohm. It's Strohm on YouTube, and it's all the shows. We put the weekly message up there from Jesus, and we put up the radio show as well. So you can catch everything on the YouTube channel. Okay. My main website is spiritspredict.com.
Okay.
Spiritspredict.com. We have players on there and links, and everything ties together.
Okay. So any of those sources, they can find everything about as far as your shows, the books, and everything. And are you working on any new project now for 2021 into 2022, or?
Well, I'm doing what's going to be a weekly devotional from his messages.
Okay, no, the reason why I ask is that you're still, what is it, 4 books shy?
Yeah. I'm trying to write the last one real slow.
Okay. Yeah, no, I know that. Believe me, I understand very much how busy the radio show and all of that can keep you. Plus,
we find that we have to be prepared with about 50 questions to channel for an hour.
Oh, you already have that down too.
I always have 50 questions, but then anything that comes through the chat room supersedes our questions. So
okay.
So
you open up the session with live chat so people can go ahead and type in questions.
Oh yeah.
Great. That's excellent. That's
No,
fantastic.
we take as many questions as we can, because we want people to understand it. This is spontaneous. I mean, people all the time are coming in and say, "You're reading these answers."
Right. No.
I ain't reading no answers.
Right. No, it's no script. This is spontaneous.
Yeah,
that's very important.
Yeah, we did a show last week, and We channeled for 4 hours,
Okay.
and I had
That's
no idea who we were going to talk to or any questions. The host, she had all her chat group all put together, and they clicked me off so that they could decide what questions and who they wanted me to channel next. So
Barry, weren't you exhausted after that? You must
pretty
have
much,
been.
yeah. I'm an old guy. It's
Forget the old guy thing. That would have exhausted anybody, period.
but I had
Tiring of
no idea who was coming up, what the questions were going to be, and we did it for 4 hours.
That's incredible. Again, thank you so much, Barry. It has been absolutely wonderful. And I
Yes,
want to thank
enjoyed it.
you.
We enjoyed that.
And
I enjoyed the old interview we did, and I enjoyed
yes,
the new
yes,
one.
yes. And I'll be in touch with you. I'll be following you through. And like I said, I'll put a link and I'm going to be subscribing to your channel. And because I think everything that we've talked about is just absolutely fascinating.
Yes, and if you want me back, I would be happy to return
Yes,
anytime you want.
yes.
Just
Again,
let me
thank you so much.
know.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Let me tell you something. Thank God I wore my unicorn headset. Let me tell you something. What a mind bender. And and it's true. I remember from my first interview with Barry, this guy didn't. His background was not that. He was an engineer, very fact-based engineer. Like, in other words, like, and I remember when he told me the story because he used to have an antique shop, him and his wife, and I believe that there was a haunting there. They had problems with the ghost, but he was describing how he didn't believe in any of this. None of this, the ghosts, nothing. None. In other words, this was not someone that you could say, well, he grew up. Is this and in his background, and it wasn't. It's been a gradual thing, and that thing that he said, it's absolutely right, because I know he mentioned that before, where he wanted, in other words, he wants the proof that who this spirit says they are is who they are. Okay, which, by the way, is very, very important. The reason why I say this is because there's a lot of people that they think of channeling, and in other shows, I've warned against it. You can't, not everybody is meant to channel. Well, not everybody has ability. And even some people, believe it or not, that do have the ability should not channel. And I know there's people going, well, if you have the ability, you should use it. No. There's people that, for different reasons, things that have happened to them in life, channeling can complicate their life a lot. And you heard what Barry said. They're well protected. They're very, very much into making sure that who they're channeling is a spirit that is totally, how can I say it, light, love, things of that nature. And I like I said, I'm going to subscribe to his YouTube shows, because I would love to see, what these different sources have to say. And this is the thing. I know there's people that are going to say, well, you know what? Some of that stuff, how do you prove it? There are certain things can never be proven. The reason why is, if you're talking about a historical figure, he says that they're going to be doing Julius Caesar. You have to understand, somebody like that, a lot of what was written about these historical figures is superficial, or they noted like certain moments in their lives, and some of it was accurate, some of it was made up. Remember, even somebody like a Julius Caesar, there was such a thing as PR, but there's a good portion of their inner life that never made the history books. There was no scribe taking notes, following the guy around. In other words, bottom line, what I'm trying to say, whether it's Julius Caesar or some other figure, there's certain things that maybe Barry will channel and talk about, but there's just no way to prove that, say, oh, that happened or that didn't happen. But my point being that just because you can't prove it doesn't mean it didn't happen. Because the truth is, the majority of us think about it. Contrary, to that movie with this cuckoo guy, The Truman Show, where, basically this character is being watched or televised from infancy up to adulthood. Okay, but that's just Hollywood. The majority of people, okay, even historical figures, even important people, kings, queens, there's a very good portion of their lives that was never recorded, and or that they suppressed if they were important enough. And of course, depending on how long ago it was, there's nobody that's going to come around and say, well, that's not the way it happened. As far as saying, well, is this, and especially if the version that this person, let's say being channeled through Barry, gives a version of their life or happenings in their life which is contrary to what history books have written about them, or academics or historians or whatever. People are like, well, that's not the way. And I've spoken about on other shows. Sometimes I'm very suspicious sometimes of certain historical versions. And I'm not saying all history is wrong. I'm just saying that sometimes history has been massaged and certain things happen or didn't happen, or, how many days were lived in that person's life. Yeah, and only history will, let's say, or record, the armies of Julius Caesar marched in, they conquered and they did this. But in between all these marchings and all these highlights that made the history books or the historians of the times were recording, this person lived days and days and days of life that nobody was there, or what motivated them, things that happen. So I think it's I think it's a fascinating subject. And I hope you all like the show. I love the show. I urge you to go and check out Barry's YouTube show, or go to his website where he's got his books. Like I said, I'm going to have links in the credits of the show. And of course, if you want to go to MiamiGhostChronicles.com or MarlenePardo.com, you can find links to the videos through, YouTube or other places. Also the podcast platforms, if you want to download the MP3s or just listen to them. Also have information about my books. And of course, if you've got a story, please send it to me on the Submit Your Story tab. I also have a newsletter that I write kooky, interesting stories about just weird stuff. And I'll usually put links to a couple of my podcasts that are related, or the latest ones. You can sign up for my newsletter. And I send that out. Depends. Sometimes once a week, sometimes twice a week. Depends if something interesting comes in. And again, I want to thank you all for being part of my audience. You're all wonderful. I've got fantastic guests coming on. So I will be seeing you next week. Take care.